guys, we're here today with Peter Ratnikov. We're really glad you could join us. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And a little bit about Peter. Peter is a really interesting guy, and I'm really excited about the chance to speak. You have a lot of different interests. You played football for a while. Obviously, there's a DJ, huge cryptocurrency advocate. Thanks a lot for joining us, man.
Of course, of course. Thank you for having me.
Now, we've never actually spoken. I've watched some of your talks and read some of what you've written, and we don't have an agenda for today. We thought we just kind of speak and see where we agree, where we disagree. If things get heated, we'll try and keep it civil. So firstly, tell me, how did you get involved in Bitcoin, in blockchain? Where did it start, man?
Well, I'm going to really quickly rewind to a very much younger age. So I guess would be first job at 11, first business at 12. Somehow got my hands on ZyQuest at the age of 12 years old. And for those people who study alternative media from a young age, there's like multiple generations of it. So I started digging deep to realize where our money comes from. If I'm going to work, have businesses for this, it just made sense to me to be like, what is the source of this thing that I'm trading my precious time and effort for? So things didn't really add up for me right away from when I was a kid. So ever since then, I've been paying attention. I've been very aware of what's going on, but without a solution there in place, you just kind of make the best of it, right? It is what it is. If you're in a situation, you make the best of what you can. So when Bitcoin came along, I think I might have heard it a couple of times, but I'm not technical by any means in the sense of my specialty, so I couldn't, in the early years, dig deep and realize if it was something of value or not. And funny enough, one of the main guys I study is 50 Cent. Not as necessarily a musician, but as an entrepreneur. If you study 50 Cent's, Curtis Jackson, I should use his real name. If you study Curtis's actions throughout his career, they're very calculated, very entrepreneurial, I think people underestimate his value as a true business and a leader. So I was in Cuba, and I don't watch much television in general. I'm mostly on YouTube if I have spare time and things of that nature. Sure. And I seen 50 Cent on a talk show, Curtis Jackson, and my fiance is always watching and all kind of things, so I'm paying attention to why not, it's on there. And he talks about this thing called Bitcoin. This is December of 2014. And he's like, I accept Bitcoin for all my services. So that was probably the second or third time I heard it, but the first time it really struck me in the head. So on LinkedIn, I'm very diverse. So I went on LinkedIn, seen through my contacts list. I guess I put a couple posts out there, and somebody reached out to me about a Bitcoin business. So from there, again, started researching a bit more. Didn't really figure it out on the first day or two. Off to another vacation. I travel a lot in the winter times. So I'm off in Jamaica now and kind of just was checking the prices. But when I got back, I made a decision. I cleared my schedule. I didn't know how long it took. It took me 3 weeks to, without being technical, to understand how this could be possible. And when it kind of just clicked, I just knew, you know what? This is it. This is for me. This is my tribe. This is where I belong. This is the right thing right now. So that's the long answer to your short question.
No, that's amazing and a great story. And I guess one of the key questions is, for you, is it Bitcoin or is it blockchain?
No, it's not even blockchain. It's the movement behind it. If all of a sudden it wasn't called blockchain and some other kind of way of making a protocol that wasn't called blockchain, was called something else, but it did the same end result. It let us interact peer-to-peer without the interference of corporations and other entities that really shouldn't be interfering with certain interactions that, like us right now. Yes, we're using Skype as a leverage, but it's not interfering with our communication in any way. So whichever currency is the first one to go mainstream to bring that, I will support that movement. So currently it's looking like it's going to be Bitcoin on the back end, maybe something like Dash, maybe a platform off of Ethereum that ends up actually going where your parents and your grandparents know about it. Sure. So I'm supportive of all the above. So yes, Bitcoin was the first. Who knows if it lasts? I definitely am supporting it all the way while it's a valuable thing. As long as I can book air flights, travel the world, pay for basic things in Bitcoin, it's one of the things I definitely support and use.
No, 100%. I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and I was talking about Bitcoin, and someone said, but when will we get to a world where you can actually use it to pay for things? And I was shocked. It's 2016. I don't think I've paid for a flight using fiat since 2014. We book our hotels through it. Wherever possible, we pay for it. You know, it's basically the base currency of our business today. And I think just a lot of people don't realize like how mainstream this has actually gone.
Well, I like relating it that some people tell me like they don't see what I see, so they don't understand. What I explain to them is if, like, especially my mother too, she knows I'm an entrepreneur, so she thinks I should be like drilling this in everybody's brain. But to me, it's like if I knew where the internet was, if I understood that we would be using Skype and all things of this nature in 1996, if you brought me back to then, you're like, look, this is what's going to be the internet. You gave me a glimpse of this day in the world, and you brought back to 96. There'd be nothing to get frustrated for because you'd be like, how don't you understand? You need this. Your business is not going to exist if 5 to 10 years from now you don't adapt. But people are like, no, it's okay, you know? So I think it's the same thing going on now. People are in denial. Andreas has his speech about the 5 stages of denial with the technology. So it's just a process. I think it's patience, persistence, like anything else. And again, it's going to come to the point where it's not going to be logical. Once people like, do you pay massive fees or do you pay almost no fees? Do you get it instantly? Like, eventually it will be a no-brainer like the internet was. But again, they have us pretty well programmed with the fluoride and television and things of that nature. So it's going to take a while for a lot of people to wake up. But again, I'm patient. You know, you're a young man, I'm a young man. Singularity might be on its way. Even if it's not, we got a good 50 to 80 to go, even if it's not, right? So
yeah, I reckon we got a bit of time, yeah?
Yeah.
So I think one of the misconceptions that I've encountered a lot is that people who don't deal with it, they think that anyone who's involved in Bitcoin believes that it will replace all world currency. And I mean, it's just a silly notion. Like, I don't believe Bitcoin is going to be the only currency in the world. But that doesn't mean it's, you know, all or nothing either.
Yeah, 100%. It's like they're comparing it to maybe the internet protocol. Things people are just, again, a little bit narrow-minded. Is of course, like, it's not going to be all. Again, I always use the comparison of the mail. When mail was flourishing, once upon a time they had a glory day where you couldn't go to a post office saying yes, ma'am, please, sir. You know, they were like very special, important people.
Sure.
Email came, completely shattered their business model. But look, the post office is still here. There's at least 5 post offices I could walk to in an urban area, and they're still here, right? So you're right. They're going to coexist. We're all going to be here to coexist, even if they have to be to the point where how almost nobody knows Bitcoin now. And let's say if somehow blockchain technology just like ended up better than we expect and it swooped the world tomorrow, well, you would still have to figure that fiat would still have the impact that Bitcoin does now, at the very least. I don't believe it's going to be that extreme, but like, how could you just think it's going to disappear? Like, again, we're getting there, like, maybe in good time. I think people do have the vision. If you like study history, we've been in a equity-based monetary system for most of human civilization, or at least the 5,000 years you could study. So this 103 years since 1913 on that we kind of progressed to a debt-based monetary system is very temporary. So, and not only that, I know I'm never going to blend in personally, because personally, as soon as we reach an equity-based monetary system, whether it be a Bitcoin, some kind of blockchain-backed, or some kind of silver, gold, some diamonds, oil, whatever it is, but actually interchangeable for these currency units, whatever we go back to. Once we reach a equity-based monetary system like we had for most of humanity, I'm going to be pushing a resource-based monetary system. John Fresco is one of the world leaders. He spent most of his life developing the concept of if we were aware of all the trees, all the berries, all the details we had, and we used the resources that were abundant at the time, and as a whole world, not as a country or nation, as a world, as humanity, we knew, okay, look, we're running low on this resource. We should not use this resource for a while, build it up, and then we'll all have this resource again. And his concept shows these cities that are, again, not much work is going to be required, and people go, what are humans going to do if we don't need work? Well, my perfect example is look at Olympics, look at any sports event. I used to play football, as you say, so I clearly love sports, but kind of expanding my mind, what is sports? Let's step outside the box. And so we make even more limiting things in these lines, and we say, look, you guys can only follow these rules in this line, and then we have 50,000, 100,000, 25,000 people going to watch other people perform. Like, humans aren't very hard to entertain. Like, if we went to a resource-based economy and people didn't have to work unless they wanted to, people go, what would we do? Humans are not very hard to entertain. We would find a way. So even when, people don't understand this whole Bitcoin, our whole movement, I've already come to the conclusion that the rest of my living life, maybe if we reach singularity, maybe not, But if we just live in this physical, like human tissue body, most of this existence for me, I'm not going to have some commonalities with the common person. Because even when we reach, let's say, a blockchain-based solution for the world, I'll be like, perfect, great step. Now how do we get to a resource-based economy so we're not eating up our planet? Better, but not great. So I'm in a situation where I've already come with terms that I'm never going to be in the same page with the common people. Whether you want to be polite, call them citizens. Sometimes they call them sheeple. Again, I love everybody, but I'm not going to blend in with the common masses throughout my life already. So I've come to grips with this, and however movement I could support that supports all humanity, that's the greater good.
No, it makes sense. I just want to put it out there that if we get to a world where we don't have to work, I'm more than happy finding things to do for myself. Like, that's okay. Yeah. I'm sure I can find ways to entertain myself.
And in a resource-based economy, I think it would be more logical. It's like, if you don't want to do nothing, you get the basic necessities. If you want to contribute 10 times more than a person doing nothing, you'll get 10 times access to 10 times more resources. Or more logically, people understand physical examples. Let's say you want to travel to another urban centers. We had all these urban cities that were resource-based economies, and you want to travel some more. Or maybe you become a tour guide for a year or two, put in your dues, and that gives you enough credits to now travel for a year or two. Like, it would be such a logical world, you know? So it's like, whatever you want, you give back and you get it back. Like,
I think for people who don't understand the idea of a resource-based economy, I think it can sound a lot like socialism, you know? I mean, there's clear differences, and they're subtle, but they're fundamental. But I want to kind of steer back for a second just to talking about Bitcoin. So, you know, one of the key questions here is, you know, where do you find yourself on the Bitcoin or blockchain continuum? You know, are you a libertarian? You're a crypto anarchist? You're a purist? You know, like
all the above. Anarchocapitalist, I guess, would be the newfound word I use, but most people aren't familiar with that. So on my social platforms, I put libertarian and anarchist. Sure. And there's another misconception of anarchist. If you actually look at the dictionary definition, more or less, I'm going to butcher it. It says, you don't want to be ruled by anybody, and you also don't want to rule anybody. That's the basic definition of an anarchist, however you want to twist the words. So, yeah, all the above. I would say all those definitions. I don't like putting titles on myself, but words are limiting, so it's you have to express yourself through that. So, yeah, all those would apply, I believe.
I'd like to just tell you a story. Like, we had a discussion the other day about, we often talk about purists. You know, when we market to people, we always think of two very different demographics. There's someone who sees Bitcoin as a payment method versus someone who's really a purist. And the other day we were talking, and I kind of came to the realization that after like 2-3 years dealing with Bitcoin, as much as I didn't think about it consciously, but I'm a purist. You know, I'm willing to wear that hat today. I'm happy to say it. Like, I'm a purist, man. You know, I don't believe that Bitcoin is going to bring about the fall of government, and I don't support the movement for the sake of, you know, destroying what we've built as a society. But I think you raised a very, very important point, which is the idea of global distribution. And that's something powerful I've seen with like the whole crypto movement, is it has the ability to distribute like more equally, you know, regardless of where you were born. Just because you were born somewhere that didn't have the advantages, why shouldn't you benefit from, you know, advantages that everyone else is getting? And I think crypto really deals with that, and that for me is exciting, you know, really exciting from a reform point of view.
Well, where you bring that in, like we say we have a global economy, but really if you look at modern banking, like the high end of banking that we have in like first world countries and cities, really there's maybe a billion and a half maximum. You could argue people that have access to that form of banking. So we call it a global economy, but what? 5.5 billion out of 7 billion people don't partake in it? Doesn't sound too global to me, right? So that's another very short-term and mid-term excitement about Bitcoin or whatever blockchain goes viral. To me, it's when I plan to travel the world, now I could interact with somebody, but instead of just leaving them my social media handles, I could actually have a form of a banking system or a financial system that we could interact with each other, and maybe across the world, it doesn't have to just be communication. I could actually support them. They could support our business, whatever. That would be a true global economy. So that's very exciting to me with Bitcoin right now, this moment. Not having to wait for anything to happen. Just being able to go to remote parts of the world. They don't even have to personally have a cell phone. You could literally just take them to a cafe, even if it's 100 miles away, closest cafe, and show them the basics, show them how to open an email for free, show them how to open an account. Even if they do nothing with it, again, if you do it to the right leader, it will have much impact. If you do it to a general person that's like not very aware, maybe not. But if you target it to the right leaders, again, it's the leaders that are going to change the world, and they always are changing the world. So we just need more leadership in our industry. That's really what it comes down to. And just like the internet did 20 years ago as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be good, and I'm sure this won't end the last time we speak either. So,
yeah.
I said I wanted to tell you a story, and it's just, when explaining to people a lot of things about, Bitcoin, depending who you're speaking to, you either have to explain to them the idea of this, fake money, right? That's the way a lot of people look at it. Or, if you want to go as far as to the concept of like digitally rare, you want to try and explain to people how, blockchain works. How can something be decentralized and real time at the same time? Or you want to go as far as things like smart contracts, like the idea of autonomous organizations, whatever it is, But I found that there's been a few things that have happened, to me or to us at work over the years that really like highlight this. And there was a time, it was about a year and a half ago, I sent some money from one wallet to another. And, we're affiliates. Like primarily that's what we do, And my partner deals with some of the other things that are all fiat based, and I deal with everything Bitcoin based. And I sent some money, and it was just before lunch. So I was like, okay guys, give me a sec, I'm just going to do a transfer quick, 1 sec. I transferred it, and I opened up, it was a Coinbase wallet, and it wasn't there, and I waited a minute, and it was literally like a minute, and I saw pending, and I waited another minute, and I was like, what the hell is wrong? It's like, it's been almost 3 minutes. Where is my money? Like, is something wrong? And like, my partner looked at me, he's like, what are you on about? We wait 5 to 7 days for a transfer. And that was when I realized that like my world is so different from the average person today, It's,
no, most definitely. You nailed it right on the money, right? It's like when you get in the comfort zone with this, and then it almost becomes your new normal. Then you step back into the other world for a second, you're like, whoa, like, yeah, okay, yeah. That is how most of the world still operates. Let me remember that, right?
We went to a restaurant the other night, and they couldn't put the tip on the credit card because there's the extra fee. And I was just sitting there, I was thinking like, you guys have no idea. Like, you're making things so difficult for everyone and charging for like ridiculousness, Like no one wins. Absolutely no one wins,
Well, I'm not going to go into the long term, but honestly, I've come to the conclusion that we live in like opposite land, or whatever you want to call it. Like, our healthcare system is killing us. Our school systems are indoctrination camps. Like, every aspect, our government officials are doing nothing for the people and just corrupting themselves. So now when it comes to certain things like that, the best thing for me is not even the question. I'm just like, you know what? This is going to change. I'm going to keep visualizing and partaking in the world we partake in, and it'll all be good. Because it's a major disconnect at times, for sure, because where we are and then where most people are currently partaking in, there's a little bit like of a delay. It's almost like faction by the time it gets to North America, right?
Sure. In the news, if we look over the last couple of months, there's definitely a few hot topics. Ethereum, like, Ethereum versus Classic, the idea of the platform and all, what are your thoughts, man?
Well, I'm based out of Toronto, so I was very fortunate to be at one of the launch centers of the official launch of Ethereum. I was literally less than 6 months into Bitcoin at the time, so I don't think I really appreciated where I was really at. I was like, oh, another crypto, like, great, one of many, like, okay, I'm here at the launch, whatever. He literally offered Anthony 10 free Ethereum to anybody that partaked in the event. And all we had to do was email him and then email him a wallet. And I had a guy I brought who was more technical than me, and now I guess I'm even more technical than him because he cares about the world, but he didn't care to keep going deep enough down the rabbit hole. So I was like, okay, for sure, he's going to figure out how to make a wallet for us, and it'll all work out. He never made the wallet. I never made the wallet. We never even claimed our 10 free Ethereum, which is decent money. Like right now, that would be like 110 American dollars or so, like Canadian, that's like 160. That's a nice night at a club, 5-star restaurant, dinner out there for nothing, for 100 people in the room, right? Yeah. So again, being kind of in the inner kind of workings, we have so many Ethereum meetups and things of that nature. I agree with a lot of I understand the concept where a lot of these programmers or whatever the right terminology for them want the computer code to be the end all be all. And I believe we might even get to the point where that is the case. But we are human beings. We make mistakes. We're in the beginning of this new technology. It's not perfected. It's not a decade in. Not even Bitcoin's a decade in yet, right? So we're still in the beginning stages. So when there is a human error, I believe that certain guys that are, as much as I love them, I love Anthony, I love Andreas, they're like the top guys. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be having this conversation now, because who would I be reading? But their loyalty to the code is a little early still, in my opinion. Like that, like die-hard code or nothing. Yes, we will get there. Patience, right? But right now, there's a hiccup. Let's be human beings and say, you know what? This wasn't what the code was intended for. Yes, we made a mistake. Yes, the goal of Ethereum is to be Skynet or whatever, right? You want to call it. For those that don't know, it's a Terminator reference.
I think that they might officially be trying to avoid the word Skynet, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's actually before I just recently found out that even before the movie, that was actually a military pinged terminology that the movie took. So it's not actually just from a movie, it's actually like a military known kind of, since the concept came out, that was the original name of the concept the military used for a computer that would kind of do everything. But anyways, whether we get there or not, let's stay away from that. It's human error. So I understand the guys who are like cryptographers or diehard, it should be like this. They're concerned with the way it happened, but I believe in where we are right now, it was the right thing to do. So I'm a big supporter of the not classic, the ongoing Ethereum. I have no problems with anybody that wants to support anything. It's a free world, free market. But from what I'm seeing, almost all the world major cryptographers, developers that are building the augurs, the apps off of the platform, maybe the arcade cities, whatever ends up getting built, is not going to likely be built on Classic. It's going to be built on the Ethereum that's continuing. So that's going to be the one that I support. And again, I understand both worlds, but again, there's a lot of altcoins that kind of had their moment and they're still here. So I believe Ethereum Classic will be in the same category. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe it's almost had its moment and it will just steady be traded for maybe even years to come. Who knows?
There's a lot of arguments, obviously. And as you said, it's very early. I personally, I'm also on the side of Ethereum. You know, I'm not involved in trading or arbitrage, because then you can obviously do whatever you want. But in terms of an ideology, like, I agree with Ethereum. I think it's dangerous because we're taking, you know, power to the people, but let's give one person more power. You know, as much as we're not, we are, you know. But I definitely think that's the right way to go. And I think that we're so far from understanding how to build smart contracts that to allow them to be, you know, ironclad, set in stone, no changes allowed, before we understand how they even work. And okay, let's just, like, you know, base the education system on them, or, you know, whether my grandmother keeps her house or not will be based on if someone set the global parameters wrong, right? So yeah, I'm with you completely. I'm quite surprised at the success of Classic, though. Like, you mentioned about companies, so big enterprises, Microsoft, you know, all of these guys, they chose to stay on Ethereum. And, you know, forgetting the price surges we saw, like following the few days after the fork, like Ethereum, you know, Classic settled again, Ethereum's mostly settled again from a price point of view. But there's still a reasonable amount of support. Like, Classic is a real thing, you know, we have some developer issues, we're missing a core team, you know, which the guys are trying to deal with. But it looks like it's going to live, man, you know, and I don't think a lot of people predicted that.
No, most definitely. And again, I believe there's room for so many things. Like we talked about, it's not going to be Bitcoin and everything. It's not going to be Ethereum or anything. Like, I'm a big supporter of Lisk as well. I believe maybe Ethereum is more likely to take on bigger, like, bank-style projects, things like you said, maybe real estate. But maybe Lisk becomes the expert for, like, gaming, or more kind of like non-high finance, kind of like
lower private blockchains.
It's JavaScript, right?
They would say, what about private blockchains? Because then it's much more accessible for people to build for their own things, just private.
Yeah, no, exactly, all of the above. And again, though that's just kind of, I think, once we establish the decentralized version of blockchain to the point where they're that secure, it'll be difficult for people not to switch over to private blockchains. So I believe those kind of just naturally happen with the progression of our decentralized blockchains. I think they kind of almost go hand in hand. If we could have decentralized blockchains functioning so well, it's almost like a no. And plus, you're seeing major, like what, over $1.5 billion the last 18 months in venture capitalist dollars into the industry, mostly for big banks. Big banks, if you study, take 2 to 3 years to launch anything, like anything. So if they started putting in the first quarter of last year, well, we should reasonably wait till 2017, 18 to see the private blockchains that they have. And I think we could learn from them, just like they're probably learning from us. They'll probably come with some creative, great things that the great minds in the decentralized space will be able to borrow, recreate, take, whatever it is. So I think it's a good thing all around that. And it's, again, back to we're saying word from the beginning, patience, right? It's happening, more leaders, that's what's going to expedite it. The more people that wake up with us and are willing to even just hear conversations like this, partake themselves, go onto the street. Like, still to this day, I think the best thing with Bitcoin, as much as explaining all that, I give lectures as well, and I talk about digital rarity, and I talk about all those things you mentioned. But I think out of all, still the best thing to this day, get them to open a wallet, send them $1. If you're a little tighter, send them 25 cents, 50 cents, whatever. It's about the concept. And then you tell a story while you send it. So usually when I do it, while they're opening it, I explain that most of the world doesn't have access to banking. You know, there's over 5 billion people that don't. And I explain to them, right now you're doing this with just an email address. Someone might have never used internet in their life, but you could show them how to open a free email address, and they could be going through the exact same process you are. Then by this time they open it, they have the password, they open it up. Now you go, look, we're sitting beside each other, but I could be in Jamaica, Russia, Africa, wherever, and this would work exactly the same way. So not everybody has to be good with storytelling, but if you could put a little emphasis on it and show them how to open a wallet and send it, I think maybe even not right away from them, but I see people's hamster wheels start turning. They're like, whoa, like this is like impossible, they would think, but it just happened. And then they usually go home, and not everybody, but you have the 1 in 5, 1 in 10, 1 in 3, whatever it is, to actually go to choose and dig deeper. And I think just a combination of that compounding all over the world and it's happening, right? It's literally happening.
No, definitely.
So I don't know if you're familiar with all these other platforms. Have you heard of Steemit yet?
Yeah, I was gonna bring it up. We have to. I mean, Steemit's definitely, the flavor of the month, shall we say, right?
Most definitely.
I have to admit, I missed it a little bit in the beginning, and one of our analysts, who Stephen, he actually called it like just after it launched, and he said it would change everything, and it's amazing. I mean, they've grown so quickly, and they also support a platform. You can launch the application, same like with Ethereum, but they have a very different interface, not based on JavaScript, and obviously the Steam Power versus the Steam Dollar. Are you using it? You use Steemit?
Yeah, I just literally jumped on last week. The thing with me, with my disconnect, not all altcoins, but all major altcoins, I like to research a little bit. So my original disconnect, when I went on it, the site looked like a $500 site my friend could throw together. So I was like, so right away I didn't take it too seriously. Like, I remember like the week it launched, and I was just like, because I'm not technical, I'm not gonna read the white paper or something until I know it's pretty much gonna happen, because to me, I don't even understand it. I'll just read it just to say I read it, and I'll take the little I take from it, right? So that's kind of was my disconnect. But again, one of the main guys I love studying, Jeff Berwick from Dollar Vigilante. So when I study any altcoin, the main thing I do is I go to their site, investigate their site, see the concept, and there's a lot of cool concepts. But the second thing I do is I take the coin, copy, paste into Google and into YouTube. Even more importantly, YouTube to me, because if there's people talking about it and there's a movement, that's the most important thing. Like, Ethereum could have had the technology it did without the meetups and the movement. Who knows? It might have not gone anywhere. Definitely wouldn't have $1 billion or more or less net worth, right? But so same with this. It was kind of like at first there wasn't many people talking about it. So I guess finally when it came back on my radar, only a couple months short later through Jeff, I watched a little podcast. I was like, let me come dig deeper, and I actually joined it, signed up. Obviously, I have a decent social media following, but none of these guys have been podcasting for decades plus, so I haven't made any real money off of it, but just to understand the concept. And to me, at the end of the day, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Steemit, if none of these last, the idea is out the rabbit's out the hat, So if it's not Steemit, if it's not Ethereum, it's not Bitcoin, it'll be something 3 generations, 5 generations, 10, 1 generation later, or maybe it is already here. Whichever the case, That's the most exciting thing for me. So it's not, yes, Steemit is here and it's going to take everything over. I hope so. That would be great. I'm all for all the above, but it's more the fact that now that the concept is here, it's here to stay. Like, it's not, we're not going to go back to, okay, let's go to the old paradigm. No, the people that are conscious are going to be aware of it. And yeah, it took me a while to understand the three concepts of steam power, steam dollars, and power up. Steam power is steam power. So those are the three you got there. But I don't know how technical we want to get today. It's not as confusing. You know, if you care to figure it out, it'll probably take you a couple hours. You got to read a couple articles, watch a couple of videos, but it's not rocket science, right? It's even for someone that's not a cryptographer or understanding technicals, I understand where they're going with it. And I think when you're saying they're meant to build like Ethereum, I think they built their platform, from what I understand, more to build social networks. So if you want to build a Twitter-looking concept, if you want to build a Facebook, a LinkedIn concept, that's what they decided to specialize in the sense of building out, which is great. And they made a great decision to stick with Reddit, the most simple kind of beta version, just to show the concept, right? I think Ethereum should do a little bit more of that. They have such great guys, and they're expecting so many other people to develop these other platforms, but they have a great team. They need to drop a couple proof of concept, or not proof of concept, but just actual small projects to ignite more people. And I know they're having hackathons and they're doing a lot. Don't get me wrong. I just mean back to the same thing. More leaders expedite this whole movement. Sure. That's all I hope for.
Paradigm. And also the idea that, it's not rocket science. And I think this is something that I'm reminded of again and again and again. Once someone came up with it, then it's so obvious. It's like, how did we not think of this before, and there's no going back. It's easy once someone put it all together. I saw you on that channel, right? You had an interview there recently, and talking about the idea of putting all these pieces together, like Satoshi, Craig Wright, whatever it is, right? And now you look at it, and there's just no way they can ever be undone. And everyone can understand it, and it's a pretty simple thing. Once you've used one, to move to the next is relatively easy. And that's it. Like, we've opened it. You said the rabbit out the hat, Pandora's box. Like, there's just no going back to the old guard, man. Like, everything was just slow and, outdated, and we didn't know it. But now, like, they've shown us the new light, right?
It was decades of suppression, right? It was they're stifling innovation. Like, I'm sure governments had, at one point, they were much needed and time and a place for everything, right? But for the last few decades, especially since the internet, they've really been just holding back innovation, big scheme. But now people are starting to, starting to trust their fellow peers more than government officials and politicians for the first time in North America. And I'm sure that study impacts the world, because we're kind of like the leaders of media in the Western Hemisphere, and kind of everybody kind of models that. So if we're starting to not trust the programming team, or less and less, I'm sure the rest of the world is too. And that's kind of, everything is kind of happening at the same time. Like, I don't believe it's coincidences that we have, things like Bitcoin and Steemit, and now the Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go, yeah.
We're going to go back in history, and that's what's going to bridge augmented reality. Like, there's going to be lots of crazy, we're all going to be using augmented reality, but really what brought it to the main light? Pokemon, funny enough, right? But it's all happening at the same time. That's why I say it's super exciting time to be alive. Like, some of the things I'm just grateful for, like, if I was a king in the 1800s, wouldn't you rather be brought here as a peasant in underwear to experience this day and age? Like, how good could you really had it in the 1800s, Like, most people are dying from basic sicknesses. It smells like, it smells horrible everywhere. Like, we're pretty disgusting beings without the modern sanitation, right? So, like, I mean, it's great. And yeah, just being at the forefront, you gotta just kind of, it's almost not overwhelming is the wrong word, but it's kind of like you want to soak in and really appreciate it, because I don't think maybe not take it for granted is the word, but it's hard to really soak everything in that's happening, like, day to day, this conversation as we're going on. It's fascinating.
No, definitely. Information overload, right? That's the problem of our time, and you have access to so much, but how much can you actually do with it, And I think one of the problems is we're creating a generation of people who like to be observers. Like, you put on the news, you watch something happen, you read an article online, you're like, I'm part of this. Why? Like you mentioned with sports. What are you doing? You're watching it. You're not doing anything, you're reading it. Like, do something, you know. And I'm as lazy as the next guy. I love vegging out. I love like taking my time. But it's important, I think, to remember, like, as we move forward, especially younger people, millennials, whatever it is, you know, when are you actually interacting and when are you not? And I think that line between being, you know, a participant versus being a voyeur is very blurred today. And I think it's definitely a challenge that, you know, at least as a parent, I'm planning to deal with. How, I don't know, but I recognize it's definitely going to be a challenge, you know?
Yeah, again, it's easier this day and age. And I'm with you. I don't know if we could look at it as a negative necessarily. It's just certain people are just meant to go through certain kind of evolutions. And I think it's just more the job of us to find the leaders that are going to make the change so people tune into a different programming. Like you said, they're just willing to be observers. So it's just us to continue being leaders and keep progressing this world so they start observing a more positive world. Not a debt-based monetary system world, not a world where, you know, people are getting poisoned and malnutrition for financial reasons, you know. Let them tune in, that's fine. Let them be observers, but let them observe a different, and I think they'll be open to that. And I think they're starting to open up. So as much as there are observers, if you give them the option, I think more and more are going to take the new light. And maybe not yet, because maybe if we were ready this moment, it would already happen. So it's going to happen when it's supposed to happen, but there's no denying that the observers are even starting to question whoever is sending them the info, right? They're starting to be like, wait a second, like, something's not adding up here, you know? So, again, it's one of those things where, yeah, how old are your children, if you don't mind me asking?
5 and almost 3, so...
Okay, let's get into that. What's your kind of, sidetrack for just a minute here, what age do you plan to introduce them to technology and things of that nature? Have you put any thought into that yet, or you're kind of just going with the flow?
A great question. I mean, a really great question. And the flip side of that is obviously, you know, how do you protect them from it? So I think it's really, what I've learned from them is that they're much more ready for it than probably I am even. And you know, like they have an iPad, and we were actually at the grandparents the other day, and my little boy like walked up to my dad's computer, and he was trying to touch the screen to make it move, and my dad was trying to explain to him that it's not a touch screen. He just looked at him, was like, look on his face, like, what's wrong with you? Like, why does it not work? You know. So that's it, like, I let them cast things, you know, they play on my phone. I don't know if you know any of these games like Clash of Clans or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't play them, but I'm familiar. I see them on the server.
So my daughter, who's 5, she plays Boom Beach sometimes on my account. She says she likes blowing up the stuff. So it's pretty cool, like she goes and attacks these people, and I'm thinking like, there's some Finnish guy or whatever, Swedish guy halfway around the world, I'm like, you just got beat by a 5-year-old girl, you know? But I think it's just at the pace that they're ready, you know? You have to have the safeguards, but what we could absorb, let's say as teenagers, or even, you know, 20-year-olds, or even today, is so much less than what our kids are going to be able to absorb at the age of 10. Yeah. And I think that, you know, you mentioned the education system. We've set up a world that helps people not to be what they can, you know? And I don't believe in like all governments are bad or anything like that. But the education system, for me, that's one clear example where we failed as a society.
And we shit the bed on that one.
Yeah. Look, we have schools, compared to 1,000 years ago, awesome. Huge win. The idea of education for all, okay, great. We score a big check mark for that, right? But then somewhere along the line, we kind of lost the plot, you know? That's what I think. And I don't want to like trash on anyone, but I definitely think that, you know, in the world of information where it's so accessible, and you mentioned augmented reality and, you know, the idea of the singularity, and we should definitely have another discussion completely about that, the idea of VR and everything else that's coming. But yeah, I think for me, my role as a parent is not to get in their way, if that makes sense. You know?
Right. I respect that. That's probably the best way, right? I think it's healthy balance in everything, right? It's like anyone can obsess with anything. If your child gets into sports, but all of a sudden, you know, it becomes a healthy obsession is good, but it gets to the point where you're seeing as overwhelming as it. No, you know, maybe you need to just go enjoy nature, go do something else, right? Same with this. If they get too into technology, just balance it out. No, let's go on a trip to whatever. Let's go camping. No phones, you know. And then when they get back, let them use their phones, iPads, augmented, whatever it is, right? So it's about the balance, I think.
I think you're right. my daughter knows I work with Bitcoin. She has no real idea what it is, but she was in the office. They were on school holidays, and so we asked like, "What is Bitcoin?" You know, and she's like, "Bitcoin is something very special." You know, like no idea what it is, but like you got it. She's like, "Bitcoin is important." You know, I'm like, "Yeah, that's right. Just keep going on that." So I think we're gonna have to wrap up for now. And just before we do, I thought of something the other day, and it's really elementary. It's not like any sort of profound discovery. But for me, it was just a way of thinking about it that helped me galvanize things. You know, as I've been involved in Bitcoin, I've gone through different stages of understanding. You know, in the beginning it was the concept. I read the white paper, I saw about this, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I was really excited, but I had no idea how it actually worked. You know. And then, at points I've understood more, and then I got to the day I remember where I understood that it was blockchain, not the coin, There's all these kind of levels of understanding. So the other day I was walking in and I had just a thought, which is that if you look at the Industrial Revolution, how that enabled manufacturing to explode, right? And the internet allowed information to be accessible, right? So what is blockchain? What is this going to do? And I think it's societal change. And it doesn't always mean massive, we're going to overthrow everything. But think how long it takes for things to change for people. And I think that blockchain is going to make it grassroots, it's going to make it fast, and it's going to allow people to become what they want to be, Yeah. So that's my 2 cents of existential philosophy about cryptocurrency. But Peter, it's been amazing. Really a pleasure speaking to you, and we definitely should some more. And even without filming it would just be great to catch up.
Yeah, sure.
And
I'll leave you with my last thoughts if I can with the whole Bitcoin space or edit. I believe that when we talk about coexisting, maybe this is more midterm, not short, but midterm. I believe once people start this blockchain revolution happens, I believe where the banking sector will go, people's big question is what's going to happen to governments? What's going to happen to banks? I think that we will choose to want to hold our finances. So things with our currency, what we trade our time, we're going to want to handle that because look how much as human beings we obsess about currency and money already. But maybe things like identity, maybe things like digital keys for your real estate, for other things of that nature, that's where I think banks are going to come in and specialize in. Because maybe we'll want to be super careful and make sure when we have big sums of income, it's offline, things of that nature. But I don't think we're going to want to micromanage every aspect of our life with that. So somebody else is going to have to step up for that. Maybe it won't be banks. But I just figure with the unlimited resources they have, that would be a pretty good niche for them to step in. So where I think we're headed in the short term is the blockchain revolution, how it's going to be more played out in the short term, I believe, is just more people are going to wake up, become more free. More people are going to have now value in their life, is going to be able to register real estate where they couldn't in parts of the world. More wealth will go globally. And governments will just become more helpful. If we go back to equity-based monetary system, we actually have to fund things governments do. They can't just print and then we deal with the inflation on the back end. Once that all gets corrected, I think governments will still be here, banks will still be here, but they'll just be more helping and more giving to the people. They'll be back to what it should have been, like any other business has to. If it's not for the customer, it's all about the customer, right? If you're not catering to your customer, you're not going to have any business. It's not like these 5 major corporations and you have to choose one of the 5. It won't be like that. So I believe we're headed to a place of more and more utopia every day.